A two-lane road runs straight into downtown Lucas, Kansas, and dead ends at a building shaped like a giant toilet. Working flush. 14-foot lid over the front door. Not a theme park. The town's only bathroom. Somehow, it isn't even the weirdest town in Kansas. Number 8. Lucas, Kansas. 332 people live here. 15,000 tourists show up every year. That's 45 visitors for every resident, and none of them are here for the wheat. Lucas calls itself the grassroots art capital of Kansas, which sounds respectable until you see the toilet. Picture the Garden of Eden, concrete trees, concrete angels, a concrete cane swinging a concrete club, all built by one farmer over decades until his own house was surrounded on every side. Nobody asked him to stop. Then there's the Garden of Isis, a few blocks over. Same idea, different material, recycled toys, old tools, doll parts, hundreds of doll parts, arms in the flower beds, heads on the fence posts. If you came for a nice small-town welcome sign, you got a decapitated Barbie collection instead. Kansas didn't warn you. Nobody in Lucas set out to build a tourist attraction. A farmer just kept pouring concrete because he had strong opinions about Genesis, and nowhere else to put them. Most tourist towns build attractions. Lucas built a town around one man's obsession, and it isn't even the strangest stop on this list. Number 7. Cawker City, Kansas. In 1953, a Kansas farmer named Frank Stober started wrapping leftover baling twine into a ball in his barn. He never really stopped. Neither did the town. Frank died in 1974. The ball didn't. Cawker City turned it into an official town festival in 1982. The Twine-a-thon, every August, still going over 40 years later. It now weighs more than a small car, over 27,000 pounds and climbing. Population 450, world's largest ball of sisal twine, sitting under an open-air canopy on Main Street, still growing on schedule. A farmer's private hobby turned into a permanent municipal responsibility. Every August, grown adults gather in Cawker City to formally tie more string onto a ball. Nobody finds that strange anymore. The twine ball isn't finished. It was never supposed to be finished. And it's not even the weirdest thing built to be permanent on this list. Number 6. Wamego, Kansas. Somewhere in Kansas, there's a town with more Wizard of Oz memorabilia than grain elevators. That's Wamego. Population 4,841. The Oz Museum holds thousands of pieces. Dolls, posters, a life-size cowardly lion. Dorothy never actually visited. There's no evidence L. Frank Baum ever set foot here either. Doesn't matter. Wamego picked a fictional Kansas girl and built an entire identity around her, complete with a yellow brick sidewalk downtown. Toto statues line Main Street. Decorated, painted, one per business, like a scavenger hunt nobody remembers agreeing to. Across the street, a working 1870s Dutch windmill stands in the city park for no particular Oz-related reason at all. A town in Kansas outsourced its personality to a movie about wanting to leave Kansas, and it worked. People drive hours to see it. Yeah, nobody involved seems to notice the irony, and honestly, that's the most Kansas thing about it. Number 5. Elk Falls, Kansas. Every November, people drive to Elk Falls to tour outhouses, decorated ones. 20 of them, walking distance apart, judged like art. Population, around 100. Self-declared title, Outhouse Capital of Kansas. Congratulations, Elk Falls. Truly, an honor nobody else was fighting you for. There's a golf-themed one. There's a Snow White one, 7 dwarfs included, all sitting on the same toilet. 1,500 visitors show up for outhouses. It started as a joke at a planning meeting in 1996. Someone said, well, we do have a lot of outhouses. And nobody in the room said no. Something else Elk Falls calls itself, the world's largest living ghost town. Population peaked near 800 in the 1890s. It's a fraction of that now. The railroad left, the businesses left, most of the people left. The waterfall that gave the town its name is still there. So is the outhouse tour. A town can lose almost everything and still throw a festival every year around the one thing it has left. Not great. Also, oddly, kind of admirable. And there's one more on this list. The town Kansas doesn't put on the welcome sign. Number 4. Hiawatha, Kansas. Population 3,280. One chair in Hiawatha Cemetery was built empty. It wasn't forgotten. It was waiting. John Davis built the monument. 11 life-sized marble statues under a 50-ton canopy for his wife Sarah after she died in 1930. 4 years, roughly 200,000 Depression-era dollars. Hiawatha had no hospital at the time, no public pool. Community leaders begged Davis to fund one instead. He said it was his money and he'd spend it how he pleased. Davis visited the grave weekly for the rest of his life. When he died in 1947, almost nobody came to his funeral except the man who buried him. The town that refused to fund his hospital now runs tour buses to his grave, and to the chair that finally isn't empty anymore. Number 3. Belleville, Kansas. In Belleville, people pay to walk past a house nobody can properly explain. Population 2007. Locals call it the Witch House. Nobody agrees on why. Built in the late 1800s on a quiet residential street, the house passed through a string of reclusive women nobody in town ever got close to. The name stuck before anyone could explain it. That's usually how these things go. It's private property now, walking tours only, by appointment, past a house that offers no welcome and gives none back. People still book the appointment anyway. 3 blocks over, Belleville also runs a museum of wooden puppets that move on their own little motors, cranking through the same gesture forever, in case you needed something lighter once the witch house was done with you. Belleville didn't pick a lane, it just made sure you'd remember whichever one you walked down. Number 2. Lindsborg, Kansas. Population 3,776. Nickname, Little Sweden, USA. And somewhere in that population count, nobody's counting the horses. Lindsborg has a wild herd of Dala horses, Sweden's traditional wooden toy, scaled up to full size, painted by local artists, and planted on street corners across town like livestock that never needs feeding. There's no official count. Nobody's rounding them up. The town was founded by Swedish immigrants in 1869 and never really stopped being Swedish. Meatballs, lingonberries, a Velkommen sign at the city limit. Above it all sits Coronado Heights, a stone castle built on a hilltop by WPA crews in the 1930s, marking the spot where legend says a Spanish conquistador gave up his gold hunt and turned back to Mexico empty-handed. The evidence is a 2-inch scrap of rusted chainmail found in 1915. That's the whole case. A landlocked prairie town in Kansas, import built its way into looking like Scandinavia, then topped it with a castle honoring a Spaniard's failed treasure hunt. Nothing here is where it's supposed to be, and Lindsborg never once apologized for it. Wooden horses that don't need feed. A castle for a man who never found what he came for. A prairie town that decided both belonged to it anyway. Number 1. Greensburg, Kansas. Population before the storm, about 1,400. On May 4, 2007, an EF5 tornado over 1.5 miles wide hit Greensburg, Kansas, and erased 95% of it. 11 people died. Here's the part that actually put Greensburg on this list. The town didn't just rebuild. City leaders had a choice. Most places never get handed all at once. Replace what was lost, or replace it with something else entirely. And days after burying their dead, they picked different on purpose. What was left standing was barely a foundation on most blocks, and 1 grain silo on the north edge of town. Every new public building, City Hall, the hospital, the school, the library, was required to meet LEED Platinum, the highest green building rating that exists, the same standard used for glass skyscrapers in cities 20 times Greensburg's size. Kiowa County Memorial Hospital became the first LEED Platinum critical access hospital in the entire country. The high school runs partly on its own wind turbine. A town of 1,400 people outgreened downtowns that had architects, budgets, and decades of head start. The Big Well, the world's largest hand-dug well, still sits downtown. One of the few things the tornado didn't get to keep.